Tim Ferriss. Today, big day in publishing history, your latest book, The 4-Hour Body, is being published. So how did you get from the 4-hour Workweek to the 4-hour body?
So it seems like a complete non sequitur, but the reality is the 4-hour Workweek just gave me permission to write this book, The 4-Hour Body, which is a much clearer reflection of my deepest obsession, which is physical tracking. So I've recorded just about every workout in all details since age 18 or so, including food logs, everything you can possibly imagine.
So just explain that in a little more detail. What does that mean? Every time you eat a meal, you write it down?
These days, that's true. In some cases, that means that I would put, let's say, a medical device, an implant into my side and track my blood glucose 24/7 and correlate it to the foods that I eat. But if you were to visit my house, for example, there's very little about time management in my house, which is what most people associate me with. But my entire kitchen, my living room, it looks like an ER. I mean, I have medical devices, galvanic skin response meters, you name it. Because looking at the data, if I gather the data and look at the patterns, I can figure out which meals make me fat. I can figure out which meals I should eat before working out to hit personal records. And by deconstructing things in the same way that people associate me with the 4-hour Workweek and deconstructing work, you can do things like my father, for example, 65 years old. He lost close to 90 pounds of fat, gained about 30 pounds of muscle, and did it with very, very small changes. So the book is really intended to be a hacker's guide to the human body.
Why is the body so important to you?
Because it is either the force multiplier for performance. It can either be the greatest performance enhancer or the greatest handicap. And there's an anecdote that I'm fond of telling that was told to me by a friend of mine about Richard Branson. So he was visiting Richard Branson on Necker Island, and at some point there was a group of 20 people, potential icons in business, and one of the questions came up: how do you become most productive? And Richard Branson sat back, thought for a second, and he said, workout. His answer was workout. So he started every day by swimming around Necker Island, and he said, by working out, I gain an additional 3 to 4 productive hours per day. And I think that in Silicon Valley, where we are right now, and elsewhere, there are a lot of people who have accepted this partial completeness. They're kick-ass as an employee or as a CEO. They're incredibly good at everything except for something physically related, and they just accept that being overweight or being too skinny or being slow, whatever it might be, is genetically fixed. And in most cases, it's not fixed at all. So I'd like to provide the tools for people to change those things very quickly. And that was one of the goals of the book. I remember very early on in the 4-hour Workweek, what triggered my conviction that I had to write this was an interview with Clive Thompson of Wired. And we were joking around in the preamble before the interview, and I said that the 2 fears of modern man could be boiled down to too much email and getting fat. And I think that's pretty accurate. But people view getting fat as completely unavoidable, and I don't think it's true.
Coming back to the concept of drug dealing, is exercise a kind of drug?
I think it can be. I think that it's a drug that's oftentimes misdosed. So, for example, I think that we choose our addictions, we choose our compulsions, and you want to have compulsions that are positive. But just to give you an example of a very common belief that I think is misguided, the concept that you need to exercise more to lose weight, I actually disagree with it. So if I am working with someone who has, let's say, 50 pounds to lose, I will actually have them focus on diet for the first 4 to 8 weeks and do no exercise. I will actually make a point of encouraging them not to exercise, because what people will do once they start exercising is they'll increase their appetite and they'll actually end up consuming more calories. And in many cases, they'll plateau or continue to gain weight even though they're exercising. Then they quit the program because they get demoralized. So I actually encourage people to focus on purely diet for the first 4 to 8 weeks and then layer in the exercise, which ends up being much more effective. So there are case studies of people losing 120, 130, 140 pounds of weight, and that's usually the pattern they follow.
How would you respond to people who argue that fat is something to be celebrated?
I would say you can celebrate fat, but you can celebrate in a way that doesn't put it on your body semi-permanently or permanently. So I think food is meant to be enjoyed. I think it's one of the great pleasures in life. So I binge once a week. Every Saturday, that's my off day. And you can literally consume in this case, literally means what it's intended to mean, literally 10,000 calories in that off day and not put on an ounce of fat. One of the experiments I did in the book was consuming 6.8 times my resting metabolic rate of pure garbage, and demonstrating that you can tweak the calories in, calories out model so you don't gain any fat. So if you want to enjoy Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner, New Year's, you can do that as long as you prepare for it. So I would agree that fat is something to be celebrated as you eat it, but not to be celebrated as you put it on necessarily.